I just hit broadcast. We're live. We've got Emily. I don't know if you remember the numbers, but if I say there's 4,000 people, divide by 1,000. But there's 4,000, 6,000 people on here right now. And Randy, I'm broadcasting. Give me a few moments, buddy.
All right. Sounds good. Sounds good.
It says we're streaming. Randy, we're streaming live on Facebook. We're streaming live on LinkedIn. We got 14,000 people who've just joined us. This is going to be a stellar show, Randy. Stellar show, dude.
I tell you what, we have a lot of good guests, and this is no exception. But one of the interesting things is that the sort of topic we're going to talk about today transcends all levels of employment. Typically, most of our audience, is typically professional and so forth, and the eyes that watch it throughout the week. But this is for entry level up through any level of job seeker. And so I'm excited, and I've had a lot of input from others within Goodwill saying, hey, this is pretty cool. I want to make sure that we get a look at this because it can help our program.
Yeah. Randy, I'm looking at NC Wise, man. I don't see it yet.
I don't either. I'll be right back.
Yeah. So we're live. Let's see. Are we? Oh, we're not live on Facebook. Let me fix that. Yeah, oh, I got it on the wrong one. All right. Now I think we're live on Facebook, Randy. Let me take a peek real quick. Hey, everybody, this is Teddy Burriss. I think my cohort just disappeared. There he is. He's back. Randy, I had to switch it. I think I have it live now.
All right. Let me hit refresh. My home studio here, my washing machine was deciding to get in on the action. So I kept hearing the sound in the background. And I had to go try to figure out how to knock that out. So
yep, we're live on Facebook, NC Wise Man, buddy. And we got 23,000 people that have joined us already. Chan is in Greensboro. Hey, while Randy gets just one final little setup tip, how about the rest of you guys drop in here? Where the heck are you from? We want to know where you are. Gerard, where are you from? Okay, and then we're going to get started here because it's 12:02 and it's time to get fired up. So
it is.
All right, you're good, Randy?
I'm ready to roll.
Ms. Lawson, are you good?
Yes, sir.
Did you get a decent night's sleep last night?
I did.
Okay, Randy, how about you, buddy?
Yeah, I'm still working on that beauty sleep, but one of these days I'll get there. So I think we're okay though. But excited today. We have a great guest. So let's get started. Teddy, yep. I'll introduce myself, turn it back to you, and we can get things started. Right. Again, Randy Wooden. I work for Goodwill Industries of Northwest North Carolina here in Winston-Salem. You don't always associate necessarily professionals and Goodwill helping professionals, but I run our professional center. It's the very first Goodwill professional center in the US and been doing this now for about 8 years. Love what we do. And this is just one example of some of the information that we share with the public, with clients, to help them do a better job of the job search. So whether it's this show or some LinkedIn webinars that I host or just individual consultation with job seekers, we're happy to try to help you. It's all free. So reach out to us. Teddy mentioned about looking in the chat box here. That's what I do when Teddy is the interviewer, and that's today. So I will keep an eye on the chat. If you have any questions for our special guest today, please chat those in the chat box, not in the Q&A, because I can only do one thing at a time, right? I'm limited.
Where's your notes today? Randy, where's your notes today?
Well, I have some here. Yeah. But I have a monitor over here. If I could only figure out how to move the windows around, I could figure out what and where all the good stuff is. But it's all here and I'm ready to roll. So let us know where you're watching from, and remember to chat your questions in the chat box. So let's throw it to Teddy. We'll get started.
Cool. Hey, everybody. Those who don't know me, I'm Teddy Burriss. I'm a LinkedIn strategist, trainer, and coach. My business is all about teaching business professionals, salespeople, how to use LinkedIn as a business tool. I love it. I typically work out of central North Carolina. Today, I'm all the way up into Montgomery County. If anybody knows where Montgomery County, Maryland is, let me know what city you know of in Montgomery County, Maryland, because I may not be too far from that city. So But today, I'm honored to have my friend Emily Lawson. Emily, wave at them so they know which one of them is you. Okay, cool. Emily's going to join us. The conversation is all about applicant tracking systems and your resume. And in my words, it's how to help your resume. Emily's going to share ideas about how to help your resume get through those applicant tracking systems, get through that barrier, through that fence, through that gate. All my words, these aren't Emily's words. She probably uses more articulate words than that. So, Emily, would you introduce yourself to everyone and tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, sure, Teddy. I really appreciate being on. Yeah, so I'm the founder of HR Logic Solutions. And when I stepped out of the corporate space as an HR VP, I actually had positioned my company for executive coaching and leadership development. And it's funny, I was processing some outplacement for a previous employer of mine. And the individuals that I was working with, very well networked. Some of them had multiple PhDs. It was an R&D lab and amazing, intelligent people, and they were totally stuck in transitioning their careers. And I realized pretty quickly that a lot of what I inherently knew from HR was just not common knowledge to the job seeker, and that the recruiting landscape has changed dramatically in the past 5 years, not to mention the past year. So for me, that was my inspiration to pivot my business model. And I've been on a mission ever since to provide clarity for job seekers and help senior leaders transition effectively.
Yeah. Are you having fun?
I'm having a blast, Teddy.
Good. Because
Yeah.
as you know, and I'm certain you know, if you're not having fun doing what you're doing the wrong thing.
No, I'm a big believer in living your passion and also aligning your work to your strengths. So for me, while I love HR, I'm a natural giver, servant, coach, teacher. And so for me, it just aligned perfectly with what I'm really good at.
Yeah. Good. So let's take the next 40 some odd minutes and let's talk about this thing called ATS or Applicant Tracking Systems. I mean, they're a business tool that two people need to understand how to use them: the recruiter and the candidate.
Yeah.
The candidate just needs to understand them. So tell us a little bit about why do we have these things? Why do we have applicant tracking systems, and what's the value of them to the candidate?
I'm going to flip that and say that the larger value is to the employer.
Okay.
So employers, they receive a lot of claims every year for discrimination, bias, and issues with non-compliance to employment law. So applicant tracking software allows the employer to manage a high volume of applicants, which has decreased dramatically with the internet and online applications. And to do that in a non-biased way, and also reduce the volume for HR so that they can focus in on that top 25% of applicants, start there, and then move that recruiting funnel forward.
So then there is value to them, to the candidate, because if all things are done properly, then you can be in that top 25%.
Absolutely. There's really simple, easy fixes that every job seeker needs to be aware of when it comes to customizing their resume to go through those systems. And I love what was said at the very beginning. No one is exempt from the system because of compliance issues. So regardless of level, it was not uncommon for employees to come to me and be really excited about championing somebody into the organization as a referral. And my response was, that's great, but they still need to get their information into our HRS. They still need to apply. And that holds true for every level. So everybody does need marketing content that is going to be friendly with these systems.
Yeah, good. So let's let's play with a few ideas. Let's play with a few tactics, a few skills that candidates can use. And I know there's, Emily, there's 28,000 people listening to this conversation right now. And I can guarantee you that 90% of them, they want to know this. They want to know, how do we hack it? How do we hack this thing? How do we beat the system? I mean, aren't those the words people use?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I'm not going to use those words, because I don't think it's because, as much as I love to hack stuff, I'm a professional embezzler. And so I'm always looking for ways to hack stuff. Now, Randy, you do know that I am still joking about that. I quit that gig a long time ago. But so take out the hack. Take out the hack.
Yeah.
What are logical things that people could be doing? A few steps that people can be doing that can help position them better.
Sure. So I'll just say anybody can hack it, truly. It's not rocket science. Once you understand the process and how the software qualifies you, it's really not difficult. But the reality is there are many layers to the recruiting funnel. So even if you get past the system, you then have to get past that front end of HR, the back end of HR, the hiring team, the hiring manager. So, just hacking it isn't going to guarantee that you're going to even get an interview, right? So I think first and foremost, just knowing that you're highly qualified for the position that you're applying for. I think that's the number one thing that people are not making the connection on. They think, oh, I'd be great at this job if they just give me a chance. But the reality is there's a lot of competition and a lot of people who may be similarly qualified by education and experience. And when you're looking at a job description, it's really important that you determine first and foremost that you're highly qualified. You meet all of the required elements. You meet the majority of the essential functions responsibilities, and you meet at least 80% of the preferred requirements as well. Once you know that you're there, then applying is going to increase your odds dramatically. I think when it comes to an applicant tracking system, it really comes down to two main categories. One is keyword integration, and the other is formatting. I think most of the myths are around the formatting. So I can start there if that's helpful, unless you had something else to add.
Well, I have a question that may kind of fall into that formatting category. And one of our attendees, Cassandra, asked, should I upload resumes for ATS online in a PDF format or in Word? Does it matter? What are the pros and cons?
Absolutely. So most systems will let you know what their preferred formatting requirement is. However, if they don't, I would always default to a Word format. Some will say PDF is okay, and that's fine, but a Word or text format is going to parse easier for the system.
A point about that, Emily, you just nailed something I forgot all about. If you're going to upload your resume to an applicant tracking system, all you're trying to do is feed it what it needs to be fed. It doesn't need to be in some glamorous PDF or Word. It could just be a raw text. Is that right?
You're right, Teddy. The flip side of that, however, is your audience isn't just going to be the software.
Okay.
And so you are going to have a human reader, and even your human reader is going to evaluate your information differently and look through a different lens. The front end of HR, they're checking boxes on your education experience, tenure, those types of things. The more strategic review is going to take a deeper dive into your past experience and how your qualifications really align for that particular role, your depth of expertise, right? So your resume, while it doesn't have to be everything, I always say it's like a ticket to an interview. You do need to be mindful that it needs to function for multiple layers of the funnel.
Yeah, got it. So good point. So if you are going to use a text file, you should make sure it's laid out so it's easy for the human to read, to want to read.
Yeah, bigger, bolder, brighter is not always better.
It's bigger, bolder, brighter. Dang it, Emily. I've always loved those words. And now you're telling me to stop it?
Like my shirt. bigger, bolder, and brighter. Hey, a couple other questions that popped in here, and these all kind of fall into the formatting talk. And I really appreciate you asking questions. So please, if you have other questions for Emily, please ask them. One of these is regarding the contact information. Should that be in a header, your phone, email, that kind of thing, a header at the top? Does that matter? Any thoughts on that?
What's interesting is there's quite a bit, again, of misconceptions about contact information, its formatting, naming convention, all those great things. So I will say that information that is placed in a header or a footer of your resume can cause difficulty for the older applicant tracking software. It has difficulty parsing that information out, and contact information is critical in this process. So you want to ensure that it is easily viewed and easily accessed. I know that there's, you definitely want, first and last name, phone number, city, state, and zip code. You don't need to put your street address. In fact, HR would prefer not to see that. We don't want to be held liable for having that information that early in the process. So the other thing is your LinkedIn URL. And people are saying online that they shouldn't be hyperlinked, and I disagree. It doesn't cause issue in the systems that I have experience with. And it makes it really easy for hiring professionals then to reach out, and they know that they're getting the right LinkedIn URL. They know that they're getting the right email address. The easier that you can make it for hiring professionals to qualify you quickly and reach out, the more that's going to work to the job seeker's advantage.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You got another one, Randy, or you want to move on?
Well, I do. I've got one that I wanted to throw out here in this sort of, and we talked this a little bit before we got started today off camera, but applicant tracking systems, you explain why they exist, and that's really predominantly for the benefit of the company, for tracking purposes, reporting purposes, and just so that if the hiring official comes into your office and says, so where do we stand on this opening, dadgummit, you've got an answer. You can say, here's where we stand, phone interviews and everything. All right, so let's get to the
maintains compliance always.
Yep. So let's get to the elephant in the room, the if you will, maybe even the myth that I've heard this for years and years and years and years and years. And it's this: there is this evil software, this little evil thing that lives in applicant tracking systems.
Sure.
That doesn't care at all about you as the candidate, and all they want to do is they're going to screen this resume, and if not enough good stuff is on it, then no set of eyes will ever see it, and you'll be lost and thrown to the wolves, never to be heard from again. So my question to you is, how prevalent, how realistic is that idea that software is doing in replacing humans, versus companies who say, okay, we have an applicant tracking system, so that helps us with reporting, but a set of eyeballs still has to look at the resume and the application to make that initial determination. So help get that straight in people's minds based on your experience.
I love your personification of artificial intelligence. That's fantastic.
It's evil. It's evil.
So evil.
But
Randy interviewed.
We hear that all the time.
Years ago, he interviewed for the Grinch, and the only reason they turned him down is he didn't like playing in the snow.
Yeah, I even dressed in green, but
you've got
seriously, we hear that
holiday panorama cover today.
We hear that so often that, I wish a set of eyes could at least look at my stuff, but I feel like I'm not even getting a set of eyes looking at my stuff. Sure. And I tell them, I don't think that's reality. What do you say on that?
No, it's actually not. The resumes are reviewed far more than people realize. And if you were even a little bit qualified, right, you're going to be evaluated. And think of it like a funnel. I mean, basically, they're narrowing the funnel so that it can be more manageable. I will say that job seeking is not for wimps. Like, it's hard and it messes with your psyche. And I think people take it as a personal attack, and it's easy to blame software if it doesn't work out. The other thing too, I'll say is, I consider myself an expert in this space, the clients that I work with, I've personally had several experiences where they've been highly qualified. I know their material goes through the system. We've done everything exactly the way that it needs to be done, but they did not get past that front layer. And I think it's important for people to also recognize that it's not just the software. There's so many reasons that come into play. Maybe the recruiting funnel is no longer active. Maybe budgets have changed. Maybe they're, recently reorg. Maybe they have an upcoming, merger or acquisition. Maybe it's politics. It could be, lack of behavioral fit. It could be so many things that I just always want to stress to the job seeker that, just be consistent, exercise good best practices, and just keep going. It will happen. It just, don't take it personally if you judge a job description as being your ideal and they don't knock on your door. Job descriptions too are not the end all be all. I'll say from HR, they're kind of stamped out, and then they put in a line or two that specifies for that particular role. That's typically what happens. I'm not saying it always is that way. So putting that much weight into a much bigger puzzle is just not painting the right picture.
Emily, you're absolutely right. Consistency is important. That your job in career transition is to get you a job. And if you do all the things that you're supposed to do, including having an applicant tracking system compliant or prepared resume, and that doesn't work with company XYZ, then assumably if you're doing your job right, you're working on company 1, 2, 3, and so on and so on.
Exactly.
So, good point. Let's just drill a little bit tighter, Emily, on Ats Friendly or Ats resume. I like what you said. Your resume has to have all the right keywords in the right places, and it has to be reformatted properly. Would you play with the keyword richness? And by the way, I understand keyword richness because talking about trying to hack stuff, I'm trying to hack stuff all the time as a LinkedIn coach, and I know that you can't. What's the word? You can't do keyword stuffing. So do you want to speak about keywords?
It's kind of like canned phrases or overused jargon in a resume. It's why you never want to copy someone's resume as your own, that templated language. Keywords fall into that category. HR is just seeing it so much. It doesn't do anything to differentiate you as a candidate and really bring to the surface why you're the right fit, right? So keyword stuffing is just a very static process. And it really is more for the software. So like I said earlier on, there's really two areas, formatting and keywords. Formatting, the high level is, colors are not evil. You can have a little color, you can have a little variation, some stylization to it to give it the aesthetic appeal. But when it comes to formatting, you certainly want to use a chronological format. You want to use a format that's more traditional. You want categories that are going to be more traditional. So you don't necessarily want leadership highlights. You want professional experience. That's what the system recognizes. Then it knows to then put that in, to parse that information into the correct category, right? The other part of that are, some tables, graphics, charts, pictures. It's not that the system looks at that all evil and says, oh, I don't like that, I'm kicking you out. It's simply that it has difficulty parsing the information that is around those objects. And with that difficulty in parsing, it then has difficulty in qualifying you because it doesn't read all the relevant information. Having those elements in your resume can be great to sell you as a candidate, maybe at higher levels where you're trying to showcase major achievements. But for most job seekers, they're really doing more harm than good. Now, when it comes to keywords,
Got a thought here, if I could jump in.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah. A couple thoughts. Now I'm confused. But thoughts. One is, in one of our, I forget who it was earlier up in the questioning threads, said, hey, what if I'm trying to pivot my career, trying to go do something different? So in that case, you mentioned you prefer chronological. So but what if what I've been doing most recently is not really what I want to do now? Does that maybe push, and would you suggest a different format of resume, or how do you deal with that if you're trying to change your?
Oh, that's actually one of my favorite questions. A lot of the senior leaders that I work with are looking to work differently. And so what we do to help in that transition is, number one, get really clear on what your target is, right? Just applying to a lot of different jobs because you can is not really going to work in your favor. Just like having a comprehensive resume or a core resume is going to work in your favor applying to a specific job. You can certainly use that within your network to give people an overview of your background and history, but getting really very clear on the job that you want, finding that opportunity, and then customizing and tailoring the content of your marketing documents so that they most closely align with what the needs are for that role. That's where the traction happens, right? So if I'm looking to transition into more business development and my background has been primarily operations, I'm not going to apply with an operations heavy resume. I'm still going to have the chronology, but instead of my value statements or bullets being all about operations, I'm going to now recreate those so that they are bringing to the surface my experience in business development and the value that I added to that employer and how that translates.
Whoa. Say that again. You call that what?
What?
Emily, you said we call that. I thought you used the word. I thought you said you broke up on me. Did you say we call that translate?
Right. So on underneath the chronology of your background, positions held, length of tenure, type of company, title, you're going to have those examples of your experience, right? And preferably, they're not going to be task-based statements of what you did on the daily. They're going to be examples of your experience that have a quantified metric associated with it. You're talking about whatever achievement or challenge you overcame, and then you're bringing it to scale with resources, teams, timelines, really painting the picture. And in doing so, you want to make sure that those are in line with the job that you're applying for, right? So if your background's in operations and those are all about operations, but you're wanting to go more business development, then you need to tailor the content so that it's reflecting experiences related to business development.
I grabbed that word translate. One second, I hand it to you, Randy. I'd grab that word translate because most people use this phrase transferable skills. And I just think that is so sterile. Translate makes me think differently. So thank you for that idea. Randy?
Well, yeah, we're about halfway through the show today. Emily Lawson of HR Logic Solutions is our special guest, and talking about resumes and applicant tracking systems, ATS. So I've got a question for you, Emily.
Yeah, you bet.
And there's a ton of questions in the chat area. So thank you for submitting those questions. We'll try to get to some of those. I'll have to put my glasses on because I'm blind anymore. But here's one of them. Applicant tracking. I'll use Goodwill as an example. When I've had to hire, which is not every day by any stretch, so I don't mean to imply that, but when I look to hire, our Goodwill has an applicant tracking system where people have to type in stuff, their work history, their schooling, all that. It's back in the old days when you had to fill it out on paper, except now it's in the applicant tracking system, and Goodwill allows you to attach your resume. So they're two separate things. It's not as though the applicant tracking system is pulling information necessarily from the resume and putting it in your application. So that's one question, is how prevalent is what Goodwill has where you can do both? Or is it more prevalent where it's the software is going to scan the resume and move the information into your application?
So there are so many different types of applicant tracking software. I will say that a lot of the larger and older corporations are actually using the larger and older applicant tracking software, which does tend to be a little bit more clunky, a little bit less integrative and able to parse information in the way that we would like it to. So there is some redundancy in that process. A lot of the next gen models, which are more easily adopted by the smaller to mid-sized organizations because they don't have other functional modules integrated into the HRIS where it's all combined. Having those next gen models, they are pretty slick. So typically things like when it comes to keywords, an older model, you would need to integrate those identically as they're shown from the job description for it to get picked up. Some of the next gen models, they don't have the same difficulty with like antonyms, synonyms, abbreviations, things of that nature, right? And they're able to parse the information pretty quickly and then allow you to go in and maybe make adjustments or correction, and it'll give you that opportunity to do so.
Because I know, at least with Goodwill, what I do, and I imagine other companies do the same thing, I want to see the candidate's best shot. I want to look at their best foot forward, and that's the resume, because hopefully they've customized that. The application forces you into a chronological depiction of your work history, and it's kind of sterile. So it is, you know, so if I like the resume, then I'll go to look at their application.
Sure.
Because the resume is their best foot forward. So if it's, so all of what we're talking about here, it has relevance, particularly, I think, for the smaller companies with a next gen kind of more sophisticated software, if you will. But there are a lot of companies out there where a set of eyes looks at it, and and so for them, it's more of the human touch still. It sounds like it's still a lot of the human involvement.
There is, and I think it's important to note that, you know, you have software that just narrows the funnel, but the front end of HR, like I said earlier, they're checking boxes. They're validating the information that the software has produced. They're looking at your length of tenure, the size of the organizations where you've contributed, previous titles held, your education, and it's very static, right? But once you then move a bit forward in the funnel, right, then the interview process starts, typically like with the phone screen for most levels, and you continue on. Once you start actually having the human engagement, your resume is a bit more like a placeholder. It is reviewed, but not in the depth that people think that it is. It's not the end all be all. You have to be able to speak to your experience and be able to translate how that relates to the position that you are going for. And that's really more of where that engagement happens on the more detailed level. You're not going to be able to fit your entire career history into your resume. It's your ticket to the interview. It's not everything.
So Randy, we've got a lot of questions popping up in chat, and unfortunately, some of these, you know, there's way too many questions. I hate it that we can answer in one sitting. Do you have any that you've grabbed, Randy, that, or do you want me to go on?
No, once you go on, I'll take a look at, and we pull a couple, we can work them in. But this is great because there are so many questions, and it's one of those mysteries, I think, that job hunters face, that they wish they could just walk in, shake a hand. Here's the resume. Oh, please come into my office. Let's have a chat. And those days, I mean, if you try that today, you'll get arrested. So
Well,
those handcuffs hurt.
There is that equivalency out there.
Yeah.
So, and I think this is like the number one thing that people need to understand. The software is simply software. It's a piece of a much bigger funnel, right? So, like I said, it's there for compliance primarily and to reduce volume. But that should not be your everything, right? The majority of hires internally still happen through the software, but the odds of a job applicant getting hired are reduced by about 75%, right? What really works is you see a job online you're interested in. I would never recommend applying through a job board. Go to the company's site and their career page, verify that it is a valid opening, they're actively recruiting, build a candidate profile in that company's HRIS system and apply there. That gets your information into their HRIS, and that allows their HR to access that information. Then after that's done, you reach out to people that you are internally connected within that organization that you're comfortable with referring you and see if you can't find opportunity for them to champion you as an applicant. They're going to bring awareness to it, and your information's in the system, and it just streamlines the process. It helps bring awareness. There's a whole webinar on correct networking and how to do that in the right way. It does take some time if it doesn't already exist, making sure you have the right champion, all those things. But you can literally virtually go in, say, hi, shake your hand, here I am. In that regard, that's the equivalency.
Emily, there's a hack that and I'm confident most people don't use, and that is to network yourself around and into an organization. And Greg, you're right. LinkedIn.
That's my number one pet peeve, honestly.
Yeah. So, and I deal the same thing on business development.
I think, unfortunately, it appeals to the job seeker who's frustrated because they don't understand the process in the system. It's also easier to sell marketing collateral that maybe isn't ATS friendly. Oh, did I say that out loud? I did. So, I think everybody needs to understand the actual hiring process and system and how to leverage that based upon what their goals are, and just simply be consistent.
So let's let me remind everyone that we can't answer all the questions, but you know what? Emily's a really, really cool person. She shares content online almost daily, ideas, tips, okay, maybe a hack or two. So if you're not following Emily Lawson on LinkedIn, if you're not, subscribe to her blog. I'm assuming, do you have a blog? I didn't ask that. Emily?
This is probably my number one weakness in my own business.
We'll talk.
Yeah, I'm definitely on LinkedIn a lot, but I'm grateful to say that most of my client base is through referrals now. And just like many people who are on LinkedIn, I'm working, right? And so the content marketing, I make sure I do that daily. But some of the other things, I'm not as good at.
But you have lots of content that if people were to stop and go review it, consume it, that can help them answer some of the questions we can't answer.
And I write it so that they can digest it at a glance and that it meets all levels.
So you write like a human, not like a robot.
We try to.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, give me 2 or 3 tips about what I shouldn't put on my resume. Because I think I should put it all out there. I mean, constantly. I mean, I think it should. And by the way, I think it should be 20 pages long because I got a heck of a huge story that tells people, no, tell us some things that we should not put on our resume, please.
What you just said is great. I think the number one issue a lot of job seekers run into, especially later on in their career, is it's exhaustive, right? I've had people submit even 10 pages to me before. And the reality is that front-end human reader and the software, they're skimming at best, right? Mm-hmm. They're looking for key elements, key qualifiers, and they're not going to take the deep dive that you think they are. That's really more for you to speak to in an interview. And a lot of applicant tracking software will actually reduce your score if you have too much information on there that doesn't relate to the job that you just applied for. So it's really important that you tailor that content and customize it for your target, and that you're really crystal clear on your target. And I will say the company that you also want to work for is really important. As far as the software is concerned, I would say, look, your resume doesn't have to be ugly. A lot of people think that an ATS-friendly resume has to be boring and just painful to look at, and that's not the case. Keeping it clean and crisp, good use of white space, concise, relevant, those are key things. But you can add a little bit of color. You can, keeping the font simple. Calibri is good, Arial is good. Things of that nature can help the system read your information, but content is always going to be key, right?
So, Randy?
Well, a couple of questions. One is, does the ATS, does it matter 1 versus 2 versus 3 versus 10 versus 30-page resumes?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so industry standard dictates that if your experience is under 10 years, It should be 1 page, under 20 years, 2 pages.
Hmm.
3 pages would only typically be warranted if you have multiple publications or you're in a technical or science-based field. That all
Okay.
being said, from the HR side, we really don't care how long it is, so long as the information relates heavily to the job that you've applied for. We don't want to see erroneous details that don't matter. And with the applicant tracking software, again, if it sees information on there that's not pertinent to the role, it actually reduces your score.
Gotcha. What about bullet points and boxes and shaded areas and some of the what I'll call the foo-foo-y stuff when you look at a
Oh.
resume?
Foo-foo,
Did I
Randy,
say
you
foo-
don't use words like that.
Did I say foo-foo-y? I did. How about if I say superfluous?
Oh,
Would you
maybe.
Ah,
Yeah,
indeed.
so there are some techniques that you can do in your formatting to help highlight or draw attention, to help the reader's eye catch key pieces that you want them to focus in on, and that's great. Shading is not inherently bad, but if it's very heavy shading, it can be a little problematic. Table, like a box, not that bad as long as you have a text box within it, right? Tables and charts can cause some wonkiness with the content getting distributed differently and not parsed correctly. Again, a more traditional format with a little color, a little highlight, a little bolding, you're accomplishing both and it still looks modern and professional.
Yeah, you got to be careful because I've seen people who produce a 2-page resume that they hand you their printed copy and it's beautiful, but then they email it to you and your version of Word gets it and your version of printer gets it and spazzes it all out. So
yeah, that's actually something that I see a lot of people run into. They'll spend thousands of dollars on a kind of glamorous resume and it doesn't serve them well. With the system, within your network, it might be, you might feel good giving it out, but sometimes that when it's overly done, it actually sends the wrong message too, right? It's not about how graphically heavy it is, it's about the content and your accomplishments, and that speaks its own volume when articulated correctly through concise language. So I'm right there with you. I think there's some little strategies to kind of modernize and give your resume that lift to kind of bring it up to date, but it certainly doesn't need to be overshadowed with a lot of graphically heavy elements.
Randy, you had another question or thought?
Well, and I had my eye on the clock here. We've got about another 6-7 minutes. Then we're going to have Emily kind of summarize and give us a few takeaways, and Teddy and I'll have a story or two if I can think of one. I don't know. I never know what I'm going to say, and then we'll talk about next week's show. But one of the things that Emily had mentioned as something that she may want to talk about, and this kind of falls back into the keyword. So we've been talking about formatting, but how do I get? Are there softwares, are there programs out there that can help me formulate and understand what the right keywords might be?
And if I think, and Randy, Emily, I believe I know where you're going to go with this, and I hope the 32,000 people in this listen to this, listen to what you're about ready to share.
Okay, so I'm just going to say beforehand, no one is paying me to say what I'm about to say.
And Teddy, why don't put this in the chat in the chat area too?
Okay.
Because there's some places. Yeah.
So just based off of my background, my expertise in HR and in working with clients, this is what I know to be true. So there is applicant tracking software out there that you can play with. However, many of them do not necessarily generate a percentage of alignment for the role in an accurate way. It's a little bit more lenient, or it may not give you the right information in an attempt to upsell some of the other products that they're offering. And they claim that it's free, and it is, right? But you don't necessarily need to go there. The tool that I like best, hands down, is JobScan. It's not free. They kind of take it to an unhealthy level in a good way. So you know that if you're scoring high using that tool, it's going to dramatically increase the odds. The reason I like JobScan primarily is they have learning modules, they have a job board that's tailored to your resume and location and how you're qualified. It's not spammy, but it will actually show you the keywords directly from that job description. It allows you to upload your resume, upload the job description. It scans the two just like an ATS will. It generates a percentage of alignment. It tells you all the hard skills that you have in your resume that or that you don't have in your resume that need to be integrated. It shows you the frequency. It shows you soft skills, alternate skills, right? So for a lot of systems, when you can upload your resume and cover letter, the system is actually going to evaluate both and look at it as one body of text in qualifying you. So you can put the hard skills into your resume, the soft skills into your cover letter, be aware of alternate keywords. But I will say, they give you like 5 free scans, every month, but it's about $50 a month. And if you're actively applying online, then it's priceless, right? It cuts the time down dramatically. I will say too that if you can create a resume that's easy to integrate the keywords so that it doesn't detract from the value of the content in the remainder of your document, that's ideal. So core competency boxes are helpful. Having like a keyword tag bar underneath the title can be helpful. Have it associate with that role. Having a branding statement up top underneath your title can be helpful. And, I'm not a fan of summaries, but if you have kind of a key accomplishment section at the top of your resume, maybe 3 top highlights, integrating those keywords in under certain categories. I really think it's important to understand too, with every job description, there's a main focus or maybe a pain point of that role. Discovering what that is for the employer in that role is really helpful because those keywords that fall under that category need to be showcased up top so that not just the system get it, but your human reader instantly makes the connection that you're the right fit to.
And you earlier when we talked, Emily, you also talked about some word cloud tools like Tag Crowd and Wordle. I mean, these are just great tools to drop the text into to see if, look, I will tell you, it was probably about 10, 12 years ago. I wanted to do some work for a huge community college network in North Carolina. And I've never had a resume in my life, whole nother story, but this guy wanted a resume. So when I put together my resume and handed it to him, he said to me, even though he was told he had to hire me, he couldn't hire me because my resume didn't even have the word trainer in it.
Well, keywords can also be helpful for your human reader who's looking at your content at a glance, right? So again, if we go back to the guy who has all this operations experience and all of his language is about Lean Six Sigma and process improvement and so on and so forth, but he's wanting to transition more business development. If I'm looking at his resume and all the keywords say operations, I'm not making the connection. But if it's more around, growth and profitability, then I'm making the connection, right? So the keywords can help at a glance your human reader.
So Emily, this is good. We're unfortunately we're not going to be able to give everything that you have to offer. This is absolutely fabulous. And again, which is why I recommend to people that they follow you on LinkedIn and look for your website. Randy, any other question that you've got that you want to share?
Yeah, not so much. We're going to get pinched on time here.
We are going to get pinched on time. So this is
Emily. Yeah, Emily. Feel free, take a good 5 minutes or so if you'd like, however long. But if you could kind of summarize, if I'm watching you today, what are a few key takeaways that you would like me to have and to hopefully implement?
Yeah. I really think it just comes down to one thing, and it pertains to every job seeker at every level. And that is to get very clear about what your target is, to build out your content so that it aligns to that target, make sure you're qualified, and don't just apply to every job that you think you can do. Be very intentional and strategic in your process so that you're applying to jobs that really are the right fit for you by level, qualification, education, etc. The other thing too is, don't just look at jobs and apply through the systems. You need that human element in the process. You need to expand and build your network in the target companies that you've determined are the right fit for you by culture, by industry, whatever that is for you. Get very clear on your top 10 and build your network internally within. And I will say that templates are a little cringeworthy. So just be very authentic in your communication. Find ways to give first. When you do message and try to engage, keep it easy for them to respond. Keeping things brief and concise is helpful. So I think just clarity and intentional and consistency are really what the modern job seeker needs right now in this crazy world landscape of recruiting right now.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Emily, thank you very much. We really do appreciate you sharing. Yeah. Randy?
Well, and one of our attendees had a request. Please schedule part 2 with Emily. You can't get enough of what you've got. Yeah. I'll tell you what, this has been, I think we've had more attendee engagement today than we've had before, ever. Yeah. So thank you, Emily, for joining us. And so now we're going to shift a little bit for maybe a quick story or two from Teddy and from me. And I guess I'll just kind of try to emphasize some of what Emily had shared. But my focus will pivot just a bit more toward the networking side. How we do business in life typically is based on know, like, and trust. If I know you, I like you, I trust you, I'm more apt to spend money with you or, hire you, either way. And I think too often people, whether it's because they're afraid of hearing no or being rejected by somebody when it comes to having conversations with other folks, they sit back on the computer all day, right here, and do this right here all day. And that's all they do. And they think, man, I just applied for 5 jobs today. And baby, I'm waiting for that phone and that email to come in because I just know I am a dead on fit. And what's frustrating too is I even get an email from a company that says, we have your stuff. We're going to review it. And if we are interested, we'll call you. And I know darn well, I'm not wasting my time. I've done a great job. I know I'm a dead on fit for that job and I'm going to get that interview. And then they don't hear anything. And so having said all that, the trump card in all this is if you have that advocate or that, I forget, champion, I think you called it, somebody who can put in a word on your behalf with someone in the company to say, hey, pull Emily out of the stack. I know she's applied. Take a second look, see what you think. That will elevate. Your resume could be mediocre. It really could be. But here again, I mean, if Teddy emailed me or called me and said, hey, Randy, I know you're looking to fill an opening at the Professional Center. And my friend John Doe has mentioned he'd applied. You know darn well I'm going to pull John Doe's name out of that stack. Yeah. And unless he's got 8 eyeballs and he's a total train wreck, I'm going to talk to him. If for no other reason, the next time I see Teddy, I better have an answer. If Teddy says, what'd you think of John Doe? And think of it this way. What if our CEO or my boss said, hey, Randy, John Doe mentioned he'd applied. Yeah, see what you think. I value my job. I am going to, hands down, pull them out of the stack. So don't focus so much attention on, gee, I've got to have that right resume. I've got to have the right words. I've got to have all this so I can get through that evil software.
Right.
But instead, pivot a good bit of your attention to the networking piece so that somebody can speak on your behalf. They don't have to say you're the best thing since sliced bread, but just to drop a name. Yeah. And that can go a long, long way. And I've seen it happen. It's happened for me. It's happened for other people. I mean, I know it works. And the nice thing is it's free. So do all of that stuff. Teddy, I'll turn it to you. Take us home and also mention our next week's guest too. This is one of those 2020 isms.
Yeah, I screwed up. I saw it. Don't say it, Randy.
I won't say it.
Okay. Look, Emily, thank you. You really got me thinking, and I've lived these mistakes. I've literally lived the mistakes that you teach people how to overcome. Let me share a couple of them with you. Um, it's your job. The story title is "It's Your Job." Your job is to build a resume that is impactful. Your job is to build a resume that gets the applicant tracking system to give you the nod, which means let you through to the next level of the funnel. Your job is to build a Your job is to build a resume that speaks to the human being relevantly, telling them who you are, what you do, relevant to the job. Now, if you don't take your job seriously, then you screw up and you get kicked to the side. And that happened to me. I had a client who asked me, and by the way, I write resumes all week long. They're called proposals in my world. My people want proposals. And it's the same thing as a resume in some way or another. But when you don't take your job seriously, you have typos in it. When you don't take your job seriously, you have grammatical errors in it. When you don't take your job seriously, you spell the company's name wrong. When you don't take your job seriously, the lady who you asked to refer you to the president of the company says, I will not do it, and I will not give you a second chance. So take your job that you have today seriously and write the right resume. Check your grammar, check your spelling, check your formatting, make sure you spell the company name right, and make sure all the content you have in there is relevant. One way you can learn how to do this is, again, listen to some of the ideas Emily shared today and some that she shared later on. Get back to the other point. The other point is, do not rely alone, or don't rely primarily on your resume to get you a job. If you want to be a little different than everyone else out there, you need to lead with something beyond your resume. And the thing you should lead with is a conversation with someone who can introduce you to someone who can introduce you to the hiring manager. That's the magic. And Randy does this, I do this. And if I'm asked by someone who I know, who I have some level of relationship with, to introduce that person to someone else who I know, where relevant and where I can, I will. And I don't hesitate at this. Most business leaders, most business professionals, and by the way, Randy, I put you and I in that bucket. Okay. Really, we're professionals, dude. We won't hesitate to help people out when we can. So again, don't lead with your resume. Lead with opportunities to have conversations, and let your resume support those conversations. Is that a fair way to say that, Emily?
Yeah, I think you articulated it beautifully.
I wrote it down earlier, and I checked the grammar and spelling before I said it. So cool. Emily, again, thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. Next week, who do we have? I got it right here, Randy. Randy's the paper and pencil guy. I'm the digital guy, so I got to use keyboard clicks to move me over there. Oh my God, Emily, do you know Lucy Wellmaker?
I don't. No.
Oh man, Lucy's going to be on. We have 2 shows coming up, and we scripted it this way, didn't we, Randy?
We did.
We did. You'll know what I'm talking about in a minute. On 12:30. Lucy Wellmaker is going to be here, and Lucy's going to have a conversation about creating your vision for your new year. So she's going to have Google Lucy Wellmaker. I guarantee you'll be excited about the conversation she gets into. She has a thing called WOW. She's all about WOW, and so Lucy's going to talk about creating your vision for next year. And then after January 1st. On the 6th, we have Dr. Lexi Lane. She's going to continue the conversation from a different perspective about creating your next year, creating Spark. And if you don't know what Spark is, that means you need to show up on the 6th. So show up on the 30th of Lucy Wellmaker, show up on the 6th with Dr. Lexi Lane, and I can promise you we will give you ideas to make 2021 even better than 2020 was. So that's my story.
Teddy, let's we've got just a quick moment. A thought here is, if somebody's watching and they have an idea, if you have an idea for a future show topic, let us know. And also, if you know of somebody who might be a good guest, I mean, we had a great guest today, right? So think about that. Let us know. Also, if you know of businesses or you're in a business that might benefit by being a sponsor here, we'd love to partner and have that discussion. So lots going on. Teddy, this is not our last show of 2020, but we're getting close. We've survived this far, and let's have a great new year. And for everybody, have a great Christmas and be safe. I know the weather here is going to turn bitterly cold. We're kind of hoping for a little snow, though. I don't know, but we'll see. Now, you've had your fair share, haven't you, Teddy? You're in Maryland today, right?
We had about a foot of snow that I didn't have to trudge through. Fortunately, I had people who protect me and shovel the driveway. But yeah, it's almost going away now. We need it to come back. So, yeah, Randy,
put some in your trunk. Put some in your trunk, pack it, and then bring it home when you come back. So you can have
I'll put it in this for you, man. Hey, everybody, have an absolutely fantastic holiday season. Have a great new year. We'll see you all in a week. Emily, thank you again. Randy, go off and make people happy.
Take care. Have a great day, folks. Take care.